Welcome to the Noise of Time Shum Vremeni blog. My name's Marcus Godwin. So the colour revolution in Belarus in one way seems to be continuing, and in another way maybe the energy is being lost already. Two very contrasting positions, two very contrasting energy levels, activity levels. Inside the country, reports today suggest that the demonstrations and so on are dwindling, that less and less people are going. Outside the country, however, things are hotting up. Local neighbours like Lithuania and Poland have even been calling for intervention, active intervention in Belarus, etc., etc. The leader of the opposition, the lady who won just over 10%, who of course says that the elections are fraudulent. As I said yesterday, I can't prove whether they are or not. What I do know is in Belarus you need to turn up with a passport as identification in order to be able to vote. In Great Britain you don't. You can go and vote without any identification whatsoever, just the slip you get in the post. So which country is more likely to have electoral fraud? Let's stay on track. Svetlana Tikhanova, if I've got her name right, is now in Lithuania, and she's telling the EU and the world not to recognise the result of the Belarusian elections, and hence not to recognise the government of Belarus, and saying that she herself is prepared to take over, what's the phrase she used? A peaceful transition of power. But why do we need a peaceful transition of power in Belarus when there's already a legitimate government there? As I said the other day, it's impossible really to believe that that such a huge majority is fraudulent. Had it been a narrow margin, it could be. So we see that the West seems to be upping the ante and not backing down in its attempt to overthrow the government of Belarus. This lady ticks all the boxes. I mean, she seems like a nice civilized person, I have to say. She hasn't made virulent anti-Russian statements that were so common during the Ukrainian putsch, colour revolution there 6 years ago. But she does kind of tick all the boxes. She's telling the EU not to recognise the government of Belarus anymore. She speaks English. She's an English teacher. Of course, this is absolutely necessary to get through to, the poor Anglo-Saxon people watching their English language TVs lying right into their faces all the time. So it seems that once again we don't know how this is going to play out. As some people have said, Lukashenko has made a lot of mistakes, but he is a much stronger person and in a much stronger position than Yanukovych of Ukraine was. I see personally, and I hope I'm right, very little chance that the Belarusian military are going to kind of switch sides and start backing a pro-Western, pro-EU, anti-Russian government, or start serving them in Belarus. I think it's highly unlikely. From the Russian point of view, they're, as usual, being extremely cautious. Many people are commentating on this with great frustration. Many people assume that there will soon be an anti-Russian, pro-NATO government in Minsk, and that will be another kind of, the border with Belarus is it's only about 300 miles from Moscow, 400 kilometers, so it's worth bearing in mind. A friend of mine, really good commentator, Andrew Korybko, wrote an article about the problems with a very good article, but actually he then made a comment afterwards, a reply to somebody's question, which I thought was much more profound than quite a lot of stuff that was in the article, explaining something about Russia. There is something in the Russian body politic and those running the show here, those in power, that somehow can never really believe again and again that the West can be that bad. They can never somehow believe that the West has really got it in for Russia and is not going to stop until such times, unfortunately, as the people, because it's only a very small minority of the ruling elites. Most Western people are actually rather fascinated with Russia, and left, if there wasn't this constant anti-Russian propaganda, we wouldn't have this hostility situation, and we certainly would a very long time ago had a visa-free regime between Europe, Russia, American Russia, etc., etc., etc. But yeah, this does seem to me to be very true, that somehow the Russian leadership can't just accept that compromise with the West always means Russia losing, the West winning, and then the West demands more compromise. Russia loses, West wins, then the West demands more compromise. Russia loses, West wins, and this won't stop until Moscow is entirely under the control, and Siberia, and the entire Russian population, and the church that they want to wipe out, and of course, above all, Russia's huge natural resources, which makes the Western elites salivate, quite literally. They want it, my precious, they really want it. However, I do not believe that this is the main reason. The main reason is religious, and goes back 1,000 years for this war on Russia from the Western elites. It goes back to the Great Schism in 1054. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. So, and the unorthodox religion that so many of them running the Western show adhere to, with everything that entails, which is the very opposite of Christianity. I'll say again that Russia is the centre of world Christianity, and has been since the fall of Constantinople. Belarus is a totally it's unlike Ukraine, where there is a Catholic West and so on. Belarus is an Orthodox country. It's absolutely, it's Russia, as I said yesterday, it's Russia. So probably that's enough for the time being. I still want to get on to some other things that I wanted to talk about in Russia, the very interesting changes to the constitution, those which are of huge importance, those which are of less importance, and of course the Western reaction to some of them. So this is Marcus Godwin signing off from St. Petersburg, Russia, on this rather interesting little place I've discovered recently, as I'm not staying at home. This is Vasilevsky Island, and there's a kind of a yacht club here and so on and so forth. You can see in the background all these boats. Yesterday I made friends with a rat that lives in a hole under a tree, but he's not around today. There are too many people. Lots of people just having a calm evening walk with their children, who are playing with spades and so on in the sand, and everything is completely normal, completely peaceful. Belarus is just 400 kilometers down the road from here. Speaks the same language, have the same mindset, have the same 1,000-year-old combined history and culture. See you very soon. Bye-bye. And if you like this, please consider contributing. Maybe I can a little bit up the technical level of my blog, etc., 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 and include more videos and more interviews edited together and so on, because I really don't know how to do that at the moment. So, from St. Petersburg,